Hey, Bo here. So, as you may or may not know, I recently posted 3 videos documenting the progression into peak trans of a YouTuber called Tonya TKO. The first video featured videos from the first half of her journey. In those, she discussed pretty passionately that she leaned strongly towards the TWAW camp, that's trans women are women, and she took issue with people who were basically not on that side and critical of that side. They didn't expressly identify as gender critical, but they were trans critical, just in the most literal sense of those words. They were critical of trans identity and of males identifying as trans, and she was very irritated by them in that first half. And then the second video I uploaded, it featured videos from the latter half of her journey, which took place several months later, several months after the last video from the first half. And that involved her spending another 3 or 4 videos discussing her updated views on trans ideology, which I guess I'll include here, and then this can be this part of the video can be a post Tonya TKO peak series discussion. Yeah, so her updated views, they were basically that she was still empathetic to those with dysphoria about their sex, and that she felt like the physically transitioned trans-identified people are different from their biological sex, but also different from the sex that they wish to be, so that they should embrace this unique state that they exist in and this unique physical experience they have, and own it, and not do things that sort of hide it. So not hide in the opposite sex, or obviously not hide with their biological sex, which none of them even want to do, but she discouraged them hiding, amongst the opposite sex, because they're not quite in that category of existence. So she encouraged them to create their own league, in a sense, create their own, own what they are, this unique thing, this unique type of human that is neither, that has, for physically transitioned people, that has physically masculine, and when I say masculine in this context and in most contexts, I mean pertaining to male, just like when I say feminine, it's pertaining to female. That's biological stuff, because any other definition is more social and therefore a bit sexist, saying painting nails is feminine. I don't love it. I try not to, but that's off topic. So what I'm saying is, what she was saying, her updated view of those videos, was that people who identify as trans and have physically made changes to their bodies should exist in that category. That's literal that literal state of what they are, which is a male human who is on HRT to do this, this, and this, or a female human on HRT to do this, that, and this. And that's unique. That's different from being the same sex or the opposite sex and quote unquote cis, right? So that makes sense. And in addition to embracing what they truly fully are, she encouraged them to petition for their own spaces, and she said she would from a genuine place, not just a talking to talk place from my perception. She said she would join that fight with them. I would join that fight with them. It's a mental thing, but the fact is they can't they can't accept their biological state, and this makes them feel better. But then the next step, the next logical step is like, okay, this type of human needs their own spaces, needs their own leagues, etc., etc. That just felt so logical and compassionate, and like such an obvious solution, like the perfect solution that should have been the next step. Like, once it became a mainstream conversation, I feel like back in 2015, 16, feels like that should have been like where it went. And I feel like I had a version of this idea too back then, but it just went in this direction that just, it feels so surreal that educated people don't see the flaws in just saying, okay, you two, male human, male human who wishes to be a female human, and female human, you're the same. Truly, that's like, how can anyone loving and compassionate, how does that make sense to you? Like, even from a loving place, like, because I know we all have biases, and of course I'm gender critical, so I have that bias, but even when I can, like, channel my, like the little kid in me that was such a people pleaser and would rather be uncomfortable than be mean, even that version of me is like, oh, then yeah, let's make them their own spaces. So the way things are, like, because I just watched, what's fresh on my mind is that I just watched Leah Thompson beat all of the women competitors. Leah's a biological male, and eviscerate them basically in swimming. And I just don't understand how even allies of trans-identified people are like, this is good, this makes sense, this feels right. Like, it feels like I'm in a dream. Like, I don't understand how you can just say two unlike things are the same. Like, the thing that distinguishes this category is not a social thing, it's not a feeling, it's a physical thing. It's okay, I don't need to, you get it. So while that was this very logical and fair solution, she still got, reamed for it. She still got attacked and condescended to and labeled this cruel transphobe when she proposed that in this latter half section of her journey. And like, knowing what I know now, and knowing it so well, knowing how TRAs and trans-identified people argue, and what they argue, and being so familiar with the ultimate kernel of it, the like center of their feelings, it's like, of course she was labeled a transphobe. Of course, even recognizing trans-identified males as different from women in any way was met with such hostility and anger, because the issue and the reason for pushback against that perfect solution is something that I'm now like really hyper aware of, and it's that trans-identified people's primary demand of basically the rest of the world, especially women of the world, is to be like, how do I say this? It's like we're required to exist to help them forget reality. Like, make me forget handmaidens, or like MMFH. Like, okay, it doesn't quite roll off the tongue, but hopefully you get what I mean. It's like, if ever anyone, especially a woman, does or says anything that deviates from helping trans IDing people forget what sex they were born, or God forbid does or says anything that might remind a trans-identified person of their sex, that person is considered a fully bad, discardable, transphobic person. You know, like, that's the root. That's the thing that is the most important thing. It's the number one rule. Like, making trans-identified people literally forget their sex is everyone's main job when interacting with trans-identified people or discussing them in this rather cultish climate where trans ideology has turned relatively free countries into places that are not that different from theocratic regimes, I have to say, because it's a very spiritual type of belief they're working under. So separate spaces would never be okay to most trans-identified males because it violates the first rule of Trans Club. Never talk about or refer to their biological sex category. I do suspect, though, that trans-identified females are more flexible here and would accept trans-identified female, like, changing rooms and bathrooms and prisons and sports categories, etc., if that were what, like, the majority of males in power agreed with and males in their community agreed with. Because, like, TIFs don't really fight things on their own as often as they comply. That's because women don't typically fight against reasonable shit like that, and they especially don't typically fight men. But males, especially ones who are not altogether there upstairs, they do tend to be more entitled and aggressive and demanding and unreasonable, especially when they're denied. It's true. So it just isn't validating to their desire to be resexed and recategorized as female if you remind them that they're different from female people by putting them in spaces separate from female people. So, like, their own spaces. It just violates the number one rule too much. And that's not even counting the, like, pervs and creeps and opportunists in their midst. Because that's the other part where we, like, can't even acknowledge that bad guys exist in their midst who are fully capable, have, and will commit male pattern violence. Like, that's another taboo thing. You can't say that. You can't acknowledge that. I almost want to, like, fast forward to trans-identified males just having all of the freedoms and social acceptance, and then when it's recognized that they are, especially the white ones, are exceptionally privileged, actually, perhaps then women can start going, this is actually pretty imbalanced. I don't know. Women are so, like, conditioned to be nice that I don't know. And then when they're not nice, they're ignored, because, like, a bunch of Leah's, the swimmer, this male person's, teammates did not agree with him joining the team, and they were ignored. So, you know, so even outside of those seeking validation, there's also the creeps to worry about. But all of that should maybe be its own video. Yeah, so what was I saying? Right, okay, so my third video, my third recent upload, my most recent upload, was just a video that really condensed both of those parts, both of the parts of Tonya's journey, still pulled from all maybe 8, 9, 10 total videos, but that of her going through this journey, but this version, the third version, condensed it further, because I just looked at part 2. It's so long, so I figured some people might want to see something that isn't so time consuming. Although it feels like long videos are a very popular type of content right now. And for the last like year or so, maybe since COVID, maybe since 2020, because like everyone's doing them and everyone seems to have time to watch them. And so I don't know, people are more bored and less busy, and it's a time killer, I don't know. But it's there for people who don't have that attention span, but you know, there is value in watching it, I mean, I guess there's value in just going to her original videos and watching 2 to 3 hour videos. You could do that, or you could watch a condensed version of that, which is the first 2 uploads broken into 2 parts, still long, about over 3 hours total. Or you can watch the third video, which is I think an hour 46 minutes of super condensed, obviously, content, her journey. And oh, I was gonna say the value in watching the longer versions is like you get a better sense, because I did cut down the phone calls, but you get a better sense of context if you listen to the fuller version, the longer version with the fuller conversations, especially the last conversation, because the very last conversation, the very last phone call, the very last part of the second video, the second part video, or that's part 2 video, or the very like end of the third video, this phone call is the last. And in the condensed version, in the third video, I hope I'm not being too confusing with this language, but in the condensed version, the video, or all of the phone calls are edited down, but that last one is the most sad to have edited down, because I recommend listening to all of it. I think the original phone call, that last phone call, which was like the peakiest phone call, like it literally just happened naturally that way, which makes sense for a peak journey. It's like, trigger after trigger after trigger, like realization after realization, and then full mask off moment in that call. And yeah, that call was the longest call, I think. That call was like a 40-minute call, and so I had to edit it down, obviously, for the third part where everything's super condensed. So I think in part 2, I don't think it's edited at all. I think maybe more like 35 minutes. But yeah, I think the full thing is in part 2. It's insightful to hear the whole thing, but not necessary. But anyway, all of that to say that because of making my Tonya Peaks videos, that caused me to come across some of the 100 videos plus on my computer in various folders, because I wanted a refresher on what sparked the peakening, which was this beef between 2 YouTubers called Chrissy and For Harriet. And I have For Harriet's video on my computer. The reason I have so many videos though on my computer from people who I disagree with is because I had all of these plans over the years to respond to them, and this goes back quite a while. I have videos that were coming at Lacey Green. She was one of the first people I can remember seeing this deluge of super hate that was very painful to watch and very infuriating to watch. And it's gosh, women have to be so strong on these platforms because the men are ruthless, really quite evil. It's almost like they're hoping for a big S with the unrelenting way they attack women in these really dehumanizing ways. Yeah, and then I have videos from, who was that? What's her name? Tori? Awesome Rants was her original name, and then she was just Tori, I think, for a while, and then she finally was Huey the Queer. And her transition, oh, that was heartbreaking. She was so bright, so intelligent. Anyway, I won't get into her, but I have some videos attacking her that I wanted to rebut. Oh, and then I have like a bunch of Andy Worski videos on my computer, which for some reason that feels the most dated, even though that's not even the oldest thing. And that was like from back when him and his evil minions were harassing the ever-loving shit out of Francesca Ramsey. And I just had these big plans in my head to respond and rebut, but I never did. Sorry, Fran. Even though she is one of the TWAW types, but, you know, still no one deserves that. But anyway, everything is so, I just take so long to do anything, to the point that I don't get around to it, too often. But for Fran, I did spend like a stupid amount of time under decoded videos, being like a one-person army defending her. Oh, memories of wasted time being angry. Didn't matter. Anyway, so yeah, making the Tonya videos naturally led me to the old For Harriet video, which is the video that I will momentarily be responding to. And I am glad I downloaded it, because she privated that video like the same week she uploaded it. And so I guess I just figured that, you know, since the video was touched on in the last videos I uploaded, that felt like bad English, but you get me, that this was a good time or a bad time to respond to it. I mean, now's as bad a time as any, with the pending war. The beginnings of it we've certainly seen. Thank you, crazy Putin. Thank you, male violence patterns. I'm sorry. I know, not all men. But yes, so, you know, that's like the reason I made this channel, was to combat this really out there, trans ideology rhetoric, and also to dissect some misogyny that's casual in our society. I mean, the name of the channel is like a comment on how women and female things are supposed to like show their femaleness with adornments in a way males don't. Like characters, I noticed this is a thing. Anyway, I don't need to break that down right now, but yeah, but that was the point of this channel, was like trans talk and feminism and cultural sexism and the concept of gender stereotypes and the mistreatment of women and girls and GNC boys and men. So it's like about time that I actually started making videos with some sort of consistency, although I'm not making any promises, because I may not make another video for another year. Unfortunately, I can't predict my own self. I'm busy and lazy. Terrible combination. So, yeah. So, what you need to know about this video before I respond to it is, basically, there were these two YouTubers, one called Chrissy, the other one called For Harriet, real name Kim, and I followed both of them. First Chrissy back in like, I don't know, 2015, I want to say. I feel like the first video I watched from her was a video about natural hair, afros, or something like that. And then I found Kim, I felt like a year later, and her first video that I can remember is like, or the one that I remember watching first, I think was recommended in the like whatever sidebar. It was like one about Nate Parker. That was like back in her big hair days. Anyway, so I noticed that these two shared a lot, but were different too. Chrissy primarily discussed and discusses colorism and ways for dark-skinned black women to deal with it. Then later in her YouTube journey, so maybe like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years ago from now, she started discussing femininity and showing dark-skinned black women that it's okay to lean into that form of expression if they want, because she does, and so many non-black women have had the freedom to as well, and she knows that it's something that black women, particularly dark-skinned black women, have in a way been deprived of and been sometimes shunned from. And this is connected to her like primary objective, which is reclaiming the very narrow and somewhat tainted image of dark-skinned black women that mainstream media has pushed for years, and that even black men who've gotten to join the, Hollywood boys club before black women could, have also pushed. Looking at you, Donald Glover. Meanwhile, Kim was more about discussing feminism and politics and black issues, and also randomly critiquing movies and shows that she watched. And I think that she was even sorta, kinda tangentially considered part of BreadTube. I vaguely remember her discussing that in a live after, I think, someone asked her if she was part of it, and she shared, like, when answering that question, that she's been asked this, or, like, sort of lumped in with them a few times. And by the way, BreadTube was just like a nickname for the community of vocal left-leaning white YouTubers of prominence. I almost feel like white is part of the identity, but it's just because it's so overwhelmingly white. But that's why I feel like that's even why there's even a question of, is Kim part of BreadTube? Part of that is because she's black. So, like, I don't know. It just seems like, yeah, it's almost like a subconscious thing where people are like, black is its own genre, so I don't know. So yeah, Kim in the past seemed to be a fan of Chrissy's, because she literally stated this at least twice. Once verbally during a live stream, and once in a written comment. I saw and heard it with my own eyes and ears. So in my mind, they were on the same team. But then Chrissy started doing femininity content and more femininity content and talking up its social benefits. And she came at it as someone who always leaned into this form of expression herself, and as someone who is very astutely aware of how black women historically haven't been entirely free to lean into certain types of social traditional femininity. So she like gave dark-skinned black women permission in a sense, and like encouragement to access those interests and that part of themselves in a community that basically expects and cultivates a sort of more hardened version of being for its girls. And in a world that sees black women, especially dark-skinned black women, in a certain very limited light, in certain very specific ways that the media pushes, like as hardened, as hypersexual, and or as inhumanely strong and ever sassy. Like, she's not dark-skinned, but Erica from Stranger Things is kind of an example of that. It's a lot. There's a lot to undo and correct and balance, Because, like, Chrissy always points out that there's nothing wrong with tough or, like, butch or sexual portrayals of dark-skinned black women, but that the lack of balance is the issue, which I agree with. And it sounds like nothing, but I think it is a little bit part of the issue of why black girls are handled so aggressively. Chrissy's approach, I thought, was very reasonable. She was never extreme, never mean to socially unfeminine women, and she never was like shaming of black women disinterested in traditional femininity. She simply made her content with a specific group in mind, dark-skinned black women, because they face a specific plight, and sometimes you have to center one group at a time, specifically your group. It's okay to do, but not according to a lot of people, which is what I'm getting to. So yeah, Chrissy isn't gender critical at all. She even is down to use whatever pronouns are asked of her. There's just a lot of overlap in her beliefs and her wants, and my beliefs and my wants. And even though she's not gender critical, she does acknowledge that quote-unquote trans women and women are different from each other, and is fully willing to point that out, but only when it's necessary. She's also said before that quote-unquote trans women are biological men, which is obviously just true according to the definition, and she didn't say this as an insult, she really didn't, but obviously that kind of talk completely violates the first and most important rule of Trans Club, as we've established. So yeah, in Chrissy's femininity content, she'd also routinely encourage her base, so dark-skinned black women, to do things like get on top of their health and weight. She would discourage unhealthy eating and discourage carrying unnecessary excessive weight, and would specifically cite the many weight-related health issues that black women disproportionately suffer from. And this was considered by many of her lib-fem detractors to be fat-phobic. I'm going to call them lib-fem. That's a necessary distinction. She would also encourage getting educated and getting out of poverty and enjoying luxury and dating hypergamously for dark-skinned black women. Something very culturally unusual for black women. So her lib-fem detractors considered this to be elitist and snobbish, and accused her of excluding poor and uneducated and breadwinning black women. But probably what was most bothersome to most of these detractors was that she made it known in her femininity content that she's referring to biological dark-skinned black women whenever she says woman. This was obviously considered super transphobic and even considered violent of her. All of these themes in her femininity content started causing black feminists, black lib-fem type feminists, who once liked her, or never liked her, to stop liking her or further dislike her. And this is also what caused them to either start pretending that she doesn't exist or begin criticizing her indirectly. That is, without mentioning her name. So it all kind of came to a head when Kim, aka For Harriet, finally mentioned Chrissy by name, but on her private Patreon thingy where she ranted about Chrissy and included in that rant like an assertion that Chrissy wished she were her, that is, wished she were Kim, and said that Chrissy isn't as smart as her or well-read as her. It was just a lot of unexpected catty immaturity to most people outside of Kim's mind or inner circle. Snobbish, one might say. And then a Patreon member of Kim's, who I assume was a genuine fan of both women, went and told Chrissy what Kim said. And so in a live stream video, Chrissy finally addressed what she'd been ignoring for a while. Like, that incident with, or that moment with Kim was the like straw that broke the camel's back. But before that moment, she had been noticing these detractors growing, and basically the rise of black lib femmes on YouTube indirectly criticizing her and being rather condescending towards her and her femininity content in general, as well as the black women who thought like her, like Chrissy. And by the way, I'm just like gutted to hear this when Chrissy makes her video. I'm so shocked that Kim has said these things. You know, from my POV, I just know her as this articulate and well-researched person who I disagree with about trans ideology, but I am not one to throw baby out with bathwater, so I let it go. But then I find out she's catty behind the scenes, and that was like really shocking to me and kind of heartbreaking. I also didn't notice the growing animosity towards Chrissy / against Chrissy. I didn't, you know, I didn't know there was anything brewing, and so I didn't know that there had been anything brewing, though I guess I could have guessed, because I did see how much Kim was a TRA, and I did have a bit of a sense of how extreme they could be, but not like I do now. But anyway, so then after Chrissy makes her like live stream video and reveals that Kim was being catty about her, specifically behind the scenes, Kim goes on and makes a response to Chrissy's long live stream video that she would say wasn't a response to Chrissy at all, even though it clearly was, and is very upset in it. And it was both a response to Chrissy and also a response to the growing community of like black femininity advocates. Because like the like root of the black femininity interest, by the way, is like, I don't know if I made this clear. I didn't make this clear. I talked a lot, but I don't think I made this clear. It's like a response to the old trope that's been kind of harmful to black women of the quote-unquote strong black woman. It's a kind of dehumanizing idea. It removes black women from complexity and vulnerability, which they naturally are in a number of ways, and it like forces them into this hardened box of you can't cry and you can't feel and you have to be, you know, wear the cape and all that. So that is part of what the interest in social femininity is with black women. Also the part where the pretty parts of it and the pretty representation that's tied to social femininity in media, black women have also been kept out of that, which they're interested in being a part of, because yeah, they exist in different expression types. So, and that's a type of expression that is very underrepresented. Okay, just wanted to make that clear. So yeah, as I was saying, Kim's video, the one I'm going to eventually get to responding to in a minute, it was both a response to Chrissy, and again, it was a response to like the growing community of black women who were discussing and promoting and encouraging social femininity for black women and hypergamy and all this stuff. And it was also a response to like gender critical women who'd been like growing under, like I think I might have been one of the ones who, she did some interview and then I was maybe one of the people who like wrote an opinion about basically saying I don't agree. And a lot of women were like, I don't agree. And I think that was also part of what was causing Kim to grow more annoyed by that type of person, because there's kind of an overlap in the femininity crew and the like trans women are men crew. I mean, it seems like that. Oh, but and she'll say this in the video, but I think her claim for her like triggered point, which I don't even say that in a negative way, because triggered just means offended when you think about it, and everyone gets offended, everyone gets triggered. It's one of those things where they make up a new word and try to shame you with it, and by they, in this case, I mean the right. But everyone gets triggered, so let's just acknowledge that. That's fine. So her triggered point was when, or the one she claims what got her so upset, is like upset enough to make this video, was like she posted a clip from an interview she did with two young activists, and she asked them in the interview, why should like black quote unquote trans women be a part of this black movement, I think, something like that. And she's and the women, or one or both of them, answered what Kim described as a perfect, or gave what Kim described as a perfect answer. But she said she posted the clip of this moment on, I think, Twitter, and then a bunch of like femininity advocates and just general TWAM people were like responding to her to challenge her. I never saw the comments, but I just know what Twitter is like. So that really pissed her off, because she's like arguing, and like she'll explain this too, but just wanted to say that. And then I guess, yeah, I don't know, I guess that's everything you need to know before watching this. That she was just getting more and more irritated. She was getting more and more irritated by the growing number of trans critical people who were disagreeing with her, however they were doing it. That plus the Chrissy incident and Chrissy calling her out, it culminated into this video, which I can now begin to respond to. I hope I can edit this down so it's not unreasonably long, but who knows. Alright, here's the video. Am I responding to it now? Nope. So pre-upload / post editing note. Obviously this is just the intro. This 40+ minute thing is just the intro, because it got away from me. I couldn't stop talking, going on tangent and tangent side quests. Sorry, it's just it's hard to control. Things make me want to talk about other things. Anyway, for some 40 something minutes is like whatever, but for some it's a drag, and you didn't get this far, in which case I'm not even talking to you, right? Because you're gone. But for those who made it and watch this, you are so weird and awesome. And forgive me for my prattling on. It's a bad habit. I'll try to work on it, but if you want to see the actual response video, the critique, it will be up shortly. It will be the upload right after this one. So thank you for bearing with me, and yeah, alright, thanks, bye.